FrankTalks.com.
The following program contains mature subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Taking a relationship to the next level. This is Passion with Dr. Laurie.
Welcome to Passion, a show all about love, sex, and relationships. Tonight is a very special day for Bell Media. It is Bell Let's Talk Day. This is, I believe, the last show that we'll be talking about Bell Let's Talk, and where you can make a difference and continue the conversation, please. This is only one day, but this conversation needs to happen on a regular basis. But today, you still have a bit of time, Bell will donate 5 cents more to mental health initiatives for every text message you send, for every long-distance call you make, every mobile call you make, every tweet and Instagram that uses the hashtag Bell Let's Talk. So do it on Snapchat, on Facebook, all of that. And really, there are 5 simple ways to help end the stigma. The language we use, the words that we use can certainly make a difference. Education. We need to educate ourselves. Look at the myths about mental illness. Look at the facts about mental illness. Kindness and compassion are very important. We need to listen. We need to ask. Being a good listener and a good friend, and talking about it. And tonight we're talking about it, but we're taking a little bit of a different angle, let's say. Because it's our regular, the last Wednesday of every month, we focus on dating with my panelists, Fritz-Gerald of EliteSpeedDating.com and Frank Kermit of FrankTalks.com, both in the field of dating and dating coaching. We thought we'd look at dating when either you have a mental illness or you're dating someone with a mental illness, because I really do believe there are particular challenges there, and we would love to hear from our listeners what your challenges have been, or it's time to talk. Let's just talk about this. And, radio is a beautiful thing because it's anonymous. I mean, you can call us for sure. And when you do call us, you could be anybody you want to be. But you can also text us, 514-800 or 71010. If you'd like to call in, it's 1-800-491-2523. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Good to have you here.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And I read an article, Frank, that you just, posted today on thesuburban.com on the website, and very interesting about dating with mental illness. So I'm hoping that we get some questions from our listeners to talk about this, because a lot of people have had this experience. And Fritz and I were talking off air, and you were recounting an interesting story that I thought would be nice if you could share it with us. No names, of course, but you can share.
No names. Yes, but a while ago, I actually dated someone who had a mental illness, and we were having a great time. Everything was good. The one thing is, I'm going to give the punch to everybody. I'm no longer with her.
Okay.
And the reason because I'm no longer with her is she hid her mental illness from me for when we were on a road trip for about 20 days.
Okay.
And it's at the end of those 20 days when things weren't working out anymore that she actually told me, well, this is my illness. And she was bipolar at the time. Mm-hmm. To make a long story short, we met at the time I was working on cruise ships. So we met on cruise ships. Mm-hmm. We were living really a dream life, if you want, traveling the world, sailing, playing around. We were on a 6-month contract. We met 2 months in, so dated on cruise ships for 4 months.
Everything was fine. You had no idea.
Fine.
Okay. Never said anything to you
at all. I thought I was dating, quote unquote, a normal person.
Okay. See, that's
right?
a myth. That's the language we have to be careful with.
Exactly.
Right? Mm-hmm.
Well, at the time, I
that was the language you had. Okay.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got off the ship and on land, we decided to take a trip. And without a road trip to go down to the United States and then come back up. And during that trip, she decided that she would not take her medication.
But she didn't tell you. At the time, you still didn't know that she was bipolar.
I had no idea that she was bipolar. And during that trip, there was, I wasn't speaking or dating to the same person anymore.
Okay.
And therefore, it's at the end of the trip when now we were both at odds with each other, that she decided to tell me, listen, I'm off my meds. I'm not taking my medication. And I told her at that time, we had already had the talk about breaking up. So it's after the breakup that she told me that she was not on her medication.
Okay.
And I told her, well, if you had told me about this from the beginning, this could have been a whole different scenario.
Right.
So
right.
That's
so
why
not
it's important.
knowing,
Exactly.
which is why it's so important. And I think we can certainly talk about that tonight is when do you divulge this kind of information? But let's go to the phone lines from Toronto. Sean joins us. Hi, Sean.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you, Sean?
Well, thank you. I'm just calling in regards to my recent ex-girlfriend.
Okay.
She suffered from depression
Okay.
and severe anxiety to the point where she was actually on sleeping medication at night.
Mm-hmm.
We recently broke up, and it's not so much the breakup that's the issue. It was a mutual decision for the most part.
Okay.
Things weren't working. The problem now lies in us having mutual friends and her best friend being my brother's fiance.
Okay.
Now, how she went about breaking up was just disappearing over the course of 2 days, so no discussion there, not as much as a text message or a phone call or any wish to meet up. She just up and disappeared to the point where I was actually Googling traffic collisions because I was concerned for her safety.
Okay.
So that's the kind of person I'm dealing with. Eventually, after 2 days, I get a text message saying, hey, this isn't working. So, I inquired as to what the heck is this? This is careless. This is selfish. What are you thinking? This is just ultimately cruel. And she says, really, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. And that's the end of the discussion. So we went back and forth a little bit about what I thought was the appropriate course of action or how she should have dealt with this. And again, I'm not upset about breaking up. I'm upset about how it happened.
Right.
And it resulted in a threat. Ultimately, stay away from me, and you'll something to the effect of you'll regret seeing me in person, which is a big problem considering we will definitely be.
Run
I mean,
into
my
each
brother's
other.
getting
Right.
married soon, right?
Right. Right.
How do I go about this?
All right, Frank, you have advice for Sean?
Absolutely. The first thing I want you to do is that I want you to print up everything and make sure that you save everything just in
Like
case.
the exchanges, you mean?
Yeah. Just keep some hard copy evidence.
Okay.
Then that's the first thing. I don't think it's going to escalate. Chances are there's a lot of hurt feelings and people say things when they're angry. So I don't think that'll actually be an issue, but it's always good to have that. The next thing I would do is I would sit down with your brother and have a conversation with him and just let him know that the breakup was not necessarily amicable. I'm assuming they know that you dated and broke up. Is that correct?
Yes, it was my brother's fiance who actually put us in touch.
Okay.
So I have addressed the issue with her.
Okay.
And they're still close friends.
Okay, I think that you should have a conversation with your brother and with his fiance and simply say, look, the breakup was not amicable. It may be a very tough situation for all of us to get together. It's your wedding. I just want you to be aware. Also let them know that you are going to be there, that you're there to support them, you want to take part.
Right.
And just let them know that you are going to be there to do whatever you have to do to try and make this situation work. But I do think that and again, I'm just a worst case scenario guy. Sure. I think that if they show up at the wedding and the scene happens, as the bride and groom, I believe they would want to know ahead of time that there's that possibility. Just in case. That's what I would suggest. Talk with your brother.
And then as far as meeting her, face to face, because I would ultimately I'd like to have a sit down conversation, but it's
that
hard
may not
to...
happen, Sean. Like, I think you need to stop saying this is what I want. She's telling you she's not prepared for that. She doesn't want that. She doesn't want to see you. She doesn't want to have to deal with it. Just because you want a certain level of closure or letting her know, hey, that wasn't okay, doesn't mean she's ready to hear it.
Sean,
but the next time we do run into each other, should we not have a discussion of some sort so we can move forward?
Only if you both want it.
She set a boundary. Respect that
boundary.
boundary.
Yeah, respect it.
And if the wedding is a few months away, let's hope the time cools heads.
Good luck with you. Good luck with that, Sean. Appreciate your call. Thank you so much. More of your calls coming up here on this special edition of Passion.
Whether you need to learn how to talk or something more hands-on, she can help. Passion with Dr. Laurie.
Tonight on Passion, dating dilemmas, and we focus on dating with mental illness. It is Bell Let's Talk Day, so every text, phone call, every hashtag Bell Let's Talk, 5 cents is donated, and we need to talk about it. So we're talking about it from a little bit of a different perspective. Dating Dilemmas brought to you by EliteSpeedDating.com. We have Fritz-Gerald and Frank Kermit in studio with us to talk about all these dating issues. We have Eric on the line. Hi, Eric.
Hello, good
Hi.
night. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm very good.
Good.
The reason I'm calling is because I've been listening all day, and obviously the whole day was devoted to people with mental illnesses
Talking
and
about it,
misconceptions. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to your show, and I hope this can inspire people. I'm a recovering alcoholic suffering from depression and anxiety.
Okay.
And I thought, I'm 50 years old. I'm a professional, and it's funny because all day I've heard, the misconceptions, people hide it and so forth. And
Right.
I was living my life like that. I was getting into relationships without being honest. And honesty is a key.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult to get into a relationship with somebody and tell them the truth about, well, this is a deal with me. But beneath it, I'm a good person,
Right.
That's always a tricky thing.
That's right.
But I just want to let everyone know that I met a lady about 2 years ago, and I just told her the truth from day one. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm really working hard. I'm a good person. Give me a chance. And she did. And to this
That's
day, we have
awesome.
a beautiful relationship. I'm sober. She really gave me a chance. She really helped me. And I just want to send a message out. Just be honest. Honesty is a key.
And
you'll never know. People will give you a chance.
Right. And you finding somebody who has compassion and empathy, and especially because they feel that you're working on it, right? It's one thing
Exactly.
to say, I'm an alcoholic, I'm not doing anything about it, versus I'm a recovering alcoholic and working really hard to improve my life. It's very hard to say no to that, when you're working so hard and you have all these other wonderful qualities. So good for you.
Yeah, and that's the thing that people forget. And I think that's been the theme of the day, is that people with, mental disorders, or that might be the wrong word. I apologize. But, we're not crazy. We're not, everyone goes through this. So I just want to let everyone know out there that if you have problems, don't give up.
No, talk
There's
about
somebody
it.
out there, but you got to be honest.
Yeah, good.
You
Honesty.
have to be honest.
I like it.
That's it.
Eric, keep up the good work. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Take care now. And how on point is that honesty?
Eric, that was amazing advice. And the key here to remember is that trust is a component in any relationship
Right.
with anybody, not just with someone who's dealing with a mental illness.
Of course.
Everybody needs to know they can trust the partner they have. And it doesn't matter what you have working against you. If you can be honest and earn the other person's trust, you will find other people out there willing to work with you,
Right.
willing to put in the effort with you.
Well, what's interesting is,
I agree.
Fritz,
Trust
your
and communication.
your story, you were dating someone for months and months and months, and then only much later found out that trust was broken immediately.
Exactly, and that's probably one of the reasons why we didn't continue. It's because I was already working now through a boundary of, I don't know how to trust. How to trust you. What else have you been hiding from me, and whatnot? As where if she had been, Eric was honest from day one.
Yeah.
I'm not saying maybe from day one, or if
But
that worked
close,
with him,
right.
close to it. If she had given me or anybody else the chance to deal with it and make my own decisions,
And to learn about it.
exactly,
Yeah.
right?
That was the thing.
Then you're looking at a whole different scenario.
Yeah. Absolutely. A couple of text messages here. You can text us at 514-800 or 71010. I'm in the situation. I married a man whom I thought was great, loving, churchgoer, and before he was a compulsive liar, gambler, and would talk to every Tom, Dick, and Harry about our problems. I became paralyzed during our marriage, and he told people I was ugly. I am now happily divorced. Well, that's awful.
It's horrible that you went through that.
Ooh.
And I'm happy for you that you're away from that and that you're away from that abuse.
Especially somebody who doesn't, like compulsive lying. And, you know, there's a difference between somebody who may be sociopathic versus somebody who is living with depression or anxiety and ultimately a good person.
I don't think we should be looking at the two extremes. This doesn't mean that if someone's struggling with issues that you should subject yourself to abuse.
Right.
At the same time, okay, we don't want you to subject yourself to abuse, but if somebody's going to be honest with you and let you know these are the challenges, get informed and see if it's something that you can deal with. See if it's something that fits within the scope of your boundaries. The truth is not everybody is going to say, yes, absolutely, I'm going to give you a chance when you're honest. But that is a good thing because they're letting you know they don't have the capacity to deal with it. The truth about humanity is you will find people who do have the capacity, but you got to put yourself out there. You got to be willing to talk about it.
Absolutely. Talking about it is definitely important. And look, I want to reiterate that just because you might be dating somebody with a mental illness who might mistreat you, they're not the same. Anybody who mistreats you, whether they have a mental illness or doing it because of that or whatever the cause is, there is no reason for that. There's no reason why you should accept to be abused, period.
You could be abused by someone that does not have a mental illness.
Of course.
They're just abusive.
They're just not nice people. If you'd like to call in, it's 1-800-491-2523, 1-800-491-2523. You can text us at 514-800 or 71010. This texter writes, my wife has an anxiety disorder. I have borderline personality disorder. Yes, there are great challenges when we are triggered. However, the fact that we have these mental health disorders allow for empathetic care when we are triggered. We support each other and allow for emotional honesty and work towards helping each other get through our episodes. Now, there you go, is another wonderful example of what it takes, right? The empathy, the compassion, and the knowledge, because you need knowledge about triggers, right?
They're very self-aware. They know what their triggers are, what their stressors are. And it sounds like they even take turns. It's like, okay, I know you're going through your thing now. I'll be supportive to you, understanding that you're going to be supportive to me later on.
Right. Now, and it's not about me. It's your episode for whatever it is that's going on, you know.
And I'm sure this brought them even closer together, the fact that they're working through their episodes together as a team.
Right.
As opposed to...
But that requires a really big level of understanding of each other's disorders and support and compassion and acceptance, which is a really big word in good relationships. That acceptance is absolutely key. My daughter is 19 and is afraid of telling any boyfriend. When she told her friends that she had anxiety and depression, they ran away. My daughter had concussions from sports. She worked so hard at school and balancing life. Tell the men to give people a chance. Please don't put all mental health struggles in one basket. Well, there's so many different reasons why people can have or suffer from a mental illness at one particular point in time. This doesn't define who they are.
Not at all. Let's also remember, it can happen to anybody at any point in their lives.
That's right.
You can be fine, never having dealt with a mental illness, and one day you're in your 50s, you lose your job, something traumatic happens, and now you're going to have to start dealing with it, and it becomes a major challenge. So everybody's got to realize it can happen to you. If it hasn't happened to you yet,
you're lucky, you're fortunate, but it could. Nobody is completely immune to events in life either. You can't control all these things, and sometimes we don't know how we react in grief situations, in trauma situations, which we are all, any one of us can be at risk for trauma.
And to the 19-year-old girl, hang in there, hang on, and just remember, those friends that ran away from you, it means they would have run away from you when the going got tough in other areas of your life. You're good to be rid of them.
Yeah.
You're going to be fine. I know it doesn't feel that way right now, but you are going to be fine when you learn to love more of yourself and be accepting of yourself. You will find people who will accept you.
And I'm sure that not all of her friends ran away, and the ones that are there, they are your friends.
Those are the true friends.
Those are the true friends, exactly.
Yeah, and that's how you can weed out the good people in your life. Or weed out the bad apples and keep the good in your life.
Sometimes
certainly.
it takes a trauma. Some couples work best because they're dealing with problems, they're dealing with challenges, and that brings them closer together. And sometimes it takes a trauma to see who your real friends are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's a valuable lesson.
It's Bell Let's Talk Day, which means we talk. We talk and talk about mental illness, the impact on our lives. We try to dispel myths and misperceptions and educate. And we're here to listen as well. And tonight, it is our special feature. Once a month, we focus on dating issues. But tonight, very specifically, we're talking about love and dating and relationships when one has a mental illness or both, or you're dating someone with a mental illness, or you're trying to date because you have a mental illness. So we'd love to hear from you. 1-800-491-2523 or text in at 514-800 or 71010. Remember, you still have some time to text, every phone call, every time you hashtag Bell Let's Talk, 5 cents is donated. It's a wonderful initiative. Very proud to be part of the Bell Media family, to be able to support this, even though we do talk about this at other times, and it is I make a living helping people with mental illness, of course. So it is a cause that is most important to me as a professional.
And I'm glad you say this, Dr. Laura, because I know we're talking about talking about it. But one thing about talking about it to your friends and your family is, if you do find that this is too much and you need help, you should go and talk to a professional.
We're here. We're trained. We are trained.
Yes.
Exactly. Talk to
a professional. It's actually a sign of strength.
Right. Dating dilemmas, the Bell Let's Talk Dating Dilemmas segment tonight on Passion.
The following program contains mature subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
She can help improve your love life in a few different ways. Passion with Dr. Laurie.
Tonight on the program, because it is Bell Let's Talk Day, we are talking about mental illness, but from a dating perspective. So how to date someone who has a mental illness, or if you have a mental illness, the challenges that you might face in terms of your relationships or dating. This texter writes, tuned in at the perfect time, met him 2 years ago while he was up. The first week we were together was magic and I fell so hard. Then a low hit and he turned mean and started wanting to check my phone because he was convinced I was texting other men while I was with him. Fast forward 2 years, we had become friends and I maintained that boundary until a time when I happened to be in a pretty bad depression of my own. Regardless of his behavior, I rekindled the romance and moved in with him. He had always been there to help me if I needed, and I had been there for him. He hit a stressful time in his life and became critical of my habits and volatile to the point I could not handle it and moved out. I'm still so depressed, especially because it seems I can never have a happy relationship with a man I love. Well, with that man that you loved, but why every man?
Yeah, that's one of the questions I have right now. It's not every man. Now, if you're going to say that every man that you've ever dated has had a similar history, if every man you've ever dated you've had this problem with, the common element in all of your relationships is you. What is it about these very trying dynamics that draws you in? I understand you fell madly in love with him in that first week when he was up. But that doesn't signal love to me. That signals definite interest when things are going good. But love is also about how things are handled when things are going bad.
Right.
So, and you knew, like, I know you moved in with him when you were feeling low, but you knew the signs were there. You maintained a friendship there, but you knew that there was situations that you could not manage with him specifically. So we have to look at some of the choices you've made here. Yeah. I would sit down and I would do a timeline. That's what I would suggest. Do a timeline of every relationship you've been in, any red flags you've ever spotted in that timeline, and the choices you made. because it's not always just about how you feel. Sometimes you got to make choices that are in your best interest, and that's how we break some of these patterns.
Right. And maybe speaking with a therapist is a really good idea.
Absolutely.
To figure this out so that you don't end up in that situation again, for sure. Let's see. This texter writes, everyone talks about how hard it is to live with depression, but nobody talks about how hard it is to live with someone with depression. Let's talk about that. I think we do talk about it, but it's probably more neglected as a topic, but it's quite a struggle to live with someone with a mental illness, and understanding it is the first part of it, of course.
It's also with the understanding that if you're unhappy with a partner who's dealing with depression, you have to look at your expectations. Because if your expectations are unrealistic, you're going to be in for a lot of pain.
Right.
It's like telling someone who is physically paralyzed from the waist down that, well, you seem to be in a good mood today, so you should be able to get up and walk.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Right.
We don't always see mental illness.
That's right.
So it's very easy for us to turn around and just be frustrated because we say, this person is fine. I don't understand. Why can't they change? Why can't they just get up and go?
Pull up their socks, yeah.
And that's not what it is. You have to look at it as the way I would describe it, almost a physical limitation that they're struggling with. And that's how you have to remember. You have to keep your expectations realistic. Once you adjust your expectations and say, I can't expect this person to do X, Y, and Z. I can only expect them to do their best ABC and in only these conditions.
Right.
Once you adjust your expectations, I'm not saying the relationship is going to be great, but the fact is even the greatest relationships have some bad episodes in them.
Right.
There isn't one fantastic relationship that doesn't have some kind of hardship, some kind of moments where everybody says, why did I sign up for this?
Right. And this is also treatable. Let's understand that there are treatments, there's therapy, there's medication. So it's about also supporting your partner through the treatment process.
And also
communication. Talk about it with the partner and let them know this is what you're going through. It's not going to be easy, but it will create a sense of trust again.
Yeah.
You know, you're in this together.
And be good to yourself, too. If you're dating someone who is going through some episode, you have to remember to be good to yourself. You have to remember to give yourself some time to yourself, your time out, some joy. Otherwise, it's very easy to get pulled and wrapped in
absolutely
into a level of misery.
Exactly. This texter writes, I texted about my wife and I before, and I want to thank you for the kind words and this show. I'm 47 and was diagnosed 4 years ago when my childhood sexual abuse was unlocked. He had dissociated. My diagnosis was a gift and explained so much about how I had lived my life. Thank you for this show. Well, thank you for sharing, because that's really important that we all talk about it and share, because we reach people who've lived the same thing. Believe me, anyone who writes in right now and tells their story, other people have lived the same story. That's a fact. There's no question about it. Fritz, this one may be for you. I was shocked that your guest, the one that dumped the girlfriend the moment he found out she was bipolar. Let me clarify. You guys broke up before you found out she was bipolar. It was her actions and the fighting that you had that caused the breakup.
Correct.
But here, do you want me to continue, though, nonetheless? He says, shame on him and good for her. As someone who suffered with anxiety from 19 years old till it finally was controlled after 25 years, that is why we don't talk about it. Because the moment we speak of it, our friends or people in general see us in a new light. Why? I'm the same person I was before you knew. All day, your radio station says, let's talk. Yet when we do, majority of the people make distance between us. And please, can you stop calling mental illness? We are not mental. Very insulting term. So what do we call it? I mean, it's not about being mental. Nobody uses that term, being mental. That is not a word that we use.
Well, not on this show.
On any, we don't use that. It's not even in my terminology. You know, we talk about mental disorders, mental illnesses, meaning things that originate in the brain, in the head.
And with that said, I mean, I do want to at least verify what she's saying. Yes, there are going to be people who run away from you. And as we had said to another caller earlier on, Yes, not everyone is going to be willing to listen. We hope that that is going to change. That's why we're doing Bell Let's Talk. We are trying to change that.
Right.
But you're right to say that not everybody is going to be there for you. Not everybody's going to be compassionate, but that's part of reality.
And I don't think everybody runs away. I know personally in my inner circle, I have friends with OCD. I have friends who have suffered with anxiety. I've supported friends who've had different kinds of episodes and depression, and that certainly wouldn't make me run away unless they're abusive to me. Then it's about protecting myself, but that hasn't been the case.
You actually want to help even more if they're honest and they tell you about it.
So you got the wrong people around you, but I get it. I get that. Look, we're trying to break a stigma here.
Exactly.
It is still something that is stigmatized, and it's also an invisible kind of illness. If it's something that's showing, it's clear. If you're diabetic, you say, "Oh yeah, you just need a medication." It's like people get that, but the other stuff they don't get because it doesn't show. You could go through your life and be suffering with anxiety and nobody knows it.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is why we're trying to talk about it.
Generally speaking, anybody who's got any sort of challenge going on, whether it's mental illness, a physical ailment, you got a challenge going on, you got to be extra picky about who you get romantically involved with, and you have to be extra picky about who you choose as a friend. The stakes are just that much higher. And that's part of protecting yourself. Surround yourself with people that you can rely on, both romantically and in friendships.
Right. And that certainly makes a lot of sense. I have an eating disorder, but I am in full recovery. I still use the present tense because recovery is an ongoing process which I work at daily. I believe that if I were to get into a relationship, this future partner would have to know when is a good time to tell this person and how. I am a little bit scarred from my last relationship because even though I showed no signs of having an eating disorder, my then boyfriend simply couldn't get past it when I told him, and I'm scared that I will never find love because of my past. We will answer that question. How do we address when we do have a mental illness or an illness of any sort? Forget, it's not just mental, but any challenge, any illness that because we've talked about physical illnesses as well that may not show. How do we divulge this? And so we'll talk about that coming up here on Passion, on this dating dilemma with Frank Kermit and Fritz-Gerald of Elite Speed Dating.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie.
Tonight on the program, Dating Dilemmas, where we focus on dealing with illness, mental illnesses, and dating. We have Fritz-Gerald from EliteSpeedDating.com here, as well as Frank Kermit, a dating coach. So let's go back to the young woman who wrote about having an eating disorder, who's complete in recovery, and she's struggled with it in the past. Obviously, it's a continuous struggle, but recovering, and now going forward, dating and letting a partner know this is part of me. This is part of my history.
Okay, the first thing we have to do, you got to make a choice. Is this something you want to tell everybody or just a select group of people? If you're willing to tell everybody, you can even include it in your online dating profile. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you really want to be that out there with it. Generally speaking, though, most people want to keep things private. Criteria number 1, make sure that when you do tell the person, you have an ample amount of time to discuss it. You don't want to simply, if you're only talking to the person for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, or you're about to hang up the phone, that's not the time to bring it up.
Yeah, not a by the way kind of thing.
No, this is something that you want to make sure you have ample time to bring up. When do you bring it up? When you feel that you want to continue to see the person for something more than just casual. If you're casually dating, you see the person once in a while, whether it's even if it's as simple as friends with benefits or something where you're seeing the person, but neither one of you sees a future for this, you don't have to share that information.
Right.
You do need to start sharing it when you see there might be a future here. I don't know. That's when you have to say, look, we really do need to sit down and talk. There's something I want to share with you. And then you bring it up. How do you bring it up? You can either just be blunt and say, look, there's something I got to tell you. This is what I'm dealing with. Or my own personal favorite, talk about either a movie that you've seen, a documentary you may have watched on the subject, a news story that you've read on the subject, even if you talk about an actor or actress that had the same condition you had. One of my all-time favorites, Robin Williams. Okay. If I was in that situation and I wanted to talk about my past dealing with anxiety, I might start talking about one of my favorite Robin Williams movies and how I love Robin Williams as an actor. And oh, by the way, did you know that Robin Williams, he also dealt with anxiety and depression? And then gauge the other person's response. If they start trash talking anything to deal with what you're dealing with, you know already that they're just not going to be an open enough partner, not a compassionate enough partner, not accepting enough, not even to bring it up.
Okay.
But if they start saying, well, yes, I loved that actor too, and I feel so bad that he was struggling with that, and if they show some level of compassion or acceptance, that's when you can say, well, I'm actually glad you said that because I deal with some of that as well. And that's how you can introduce it.
Right. Okay, good advice.
But very, very clear. You have to make sure there's ample time to talk about it.
I like that you said that, Frank, because I do have some people who've asked me, should I talk about this at speed dating? And
which is like a 5-minute conversation.
Which is a 5-minute conversation. And what I tell them is you only have 5 minutes. And within that 5 minutes, maybe you can, maybe you can't. I'm of the opinion that you can't fully explain it'll
be the whole 5 minutes.
Exactly.
That's not what you want to focus the speed dating conversation on.
So go through your 5 minutes, try to see if there's a connection, and save that conversation for the second. If you want to go on a second date with that person, save that conversation where you will have an ample amount of time to gauge, see if you actually do want to tell them, and if you do tell them, you have the amount of time necessary to be able to fully discuss this.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. This texter says, define depression. How does one know that they're depressed? Does it always need to be diagnosed? Is it possible to just know you're depressed? Well, to get a diagnosis of depression, there are some symptoms to look for. And sometimes it can only be once in your life, but unfortunately, some people will have multiple episodes of depression. Once you have one, you're more prone for others. But we're talking about these are symptoms that occur most of the day, nearly every day, and for a period of time, for a couple of, at least for 6 weeks, I believe is the, in the diagnostic criteria. But it's feelings of sadness, tearfulness, emptiness, or hopelessness. Could be also including angry outbursts, irritability or frustration, even little things that set you off. This is an important one, a loss of interest or pleasure in most or all normal activities or all activities that you once enjoyed, even sex or hobbies or sports that you normally find pleasurable. Sleep disturbances, so some people experience insomnia or they sleep too much. Just a general lack of energy, like everything takes an effort. You become so sluggish that even the smallest task takes an awful lot of effort. A change in appetite, often it's a reduced appetite, so it comes with sometimes weight loss. For some people, it might be weight gain, increased cravings for food. Anxiety can come with it, feeling agitated. So there's one side which is sluggishness, another side which is more feeling the restless side or the agitation side. Sometimes you feel that your thinking is kind of slow, or your speaking is slower, or your movements are slower. Feelings of worthlessness. Feelings of guilt, blaming yourself, fixating on past failures or things you perceive as failures. Trouble concentrating is another big one. Trouble making decisions, trouble remembering things, and dark thoughts. Recurrent thoughts of death. Of course, the most severe are suicidal thoughts and suicide attempts. Right. So those are. You'd have to have quite a few of these symptoms to be diagnosed with depression. Not to say that a lot of people don't feel down some of the time. I think that's just being human, and with everything that goes on in life, that's probably something. So I hope that answers that. Let me just share a couple more texts here. You're not calling us mental. It's just the term mental illness. We should lose the word mental. Thank you, Dr. Laurie, for stepping in when your guest did slip and said not normal, and you did stop him. So you couldn't see the quotation marks that he did around his normal, and you did stop him in his track and tell him you have to watch what you say. And it's true. We all have to watch our language around that. And if anything, this sensitizes us to how we talk about it,
We have to remember that we are the ambassadors for how we want to be treated, and we have to communicate things when they're bothering us.
Absolutely. This texter wants to know, would ADHD be considered a mental illness? Now, ADHD is it's a state of a brain. It's a neurological state. So I have to check if it's in the it's in our diagnostic and statistical manual that we all use, but not considered. I don't believe it's considered a mental illness, but it is. There's neurotypical brains and atypical brains, and it would be, or neurodiverse brains, and ADD would be in the neurodiverse brain, but it also brings its challenges. And I work a lot with couples where one person has ADHD or one person is on the autism spectrum, even though they're not necessarily considered as such mental illnesses. They are a different configuration of the brain that brings with it its particular challenges, especially in relationships, and that's really important. Guys, we've run out of time. I know we could do this all night long, and we've had some really great texts and feedback, and they continue to pour in, and I'm really sorry that we just don't have enough time to spend with each and every one of you, but thank you for being with us tonight. Fritz, thank you very much. You can find him at elitespeeddating.com in Montreal and in Toronto. They do events in both. Frank can be reached at franktalks.com. You can find me at drlaurie.com. Thank you to our technical crew as well in Montreal and Toronto. You need to find me. You can through social media. My handle at Dr. Laurie Betito, spelled Betito. We'll talk again tomorrow evening, but first stay tuned for the comedy show with Joey Elias. Have a great rest of the evening, and remember to fill your life with passion.
FrankTalks.com, 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 FrankTalks.com. Oh, Frank Talks, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com. Oh, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com. Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com. Oh, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com. Oh, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com. Oh, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com. Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com. Oh, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating and relationships? Visit FrankTalks.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating, or relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at FrankTalks.com. FrankTalks.com, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com, FrankTalks.com, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com, FrankTalks.com.